Okay. Alrighty, there we go. Camera's working. Okay. Let's call the meeting to order, and we'll start with, do you want to put the agenda up, Joe? All right. So the agenda's on the screen. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none. Do we need a voice vote on this one, Joe?
But with no changes, we do not.
Okay. No changes, then the agenda is approved as presented, and we will move to the minutes from our May 3rd meeting. Joe, if you want to throw those up for the group. All right. Minutes are on the screen. Anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second, Chad Hennepin.
Thank you, Chad. Who was the first?
Brian.
Brian. Okay, thank you, Brian. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Joe?
Anoka County, McPherson. Or anybody. Carver County, Robgent. Or anybody. Dakota County, Labrie. Or anybody. I swear we had a
Aaron's here.
Hennepin County, Ellos.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Isaacson.
Aye.
Scott County, Jensen.
Aye.
Washington County, Leitner.
Aye.
7W, Witter.
I'm here, but I'm going to abstain for lack of attendance.
Okay, Tab, Kotsukos.
Aye.
MTS, Steve Peterson.
Aye.
Met Council of Community Development, Michael Larson.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Harrington. MnDOT Metro, Crockett.
Aye.
MPCA, AO.
Aye.
Mac, Reef. Suburban Transit, Fighton.
Aye.
MnDOT Freight. I have Pittaparthy. I know that's wrong. MnDOT Freight,
Shelley Meyer. Aye.
thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't
No,
update.
that's quite all right. Thank you.
Deed, Eddie. Is vacant. Bicycle, Sabota.
Abstain.
Okay, pedestrian, Turner Bargain.
Aye.
Met City, Bloomington, Keel.
I'm here, but I'll abstain as well.
Chanhassen, Howley.
Aye.
Lakeville, Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Ellis.
Aye.
Friendly, Kozlucher. Maple Grove, Hagen.
Aye.
Plymouth, Thompson is not here. About Bounty, are you here? Okay, West St. Paul, Beckwith.
Aye.
Minneapolis Engineering, Hager.
Aye.
Planning, Mayo.
I'll abstain as I wasn't there.
Gotcha. St. Paul Engineering, Nick Peterson,
Aye.
and Planning, Dermody.
Aye.
That's it, and the ayes have it.
All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you, everybody. Has anybody signed in to provide public comment on the business before the committee today?
Chair, that has not occurred.
Okay. All right. Seeing none. Elaine, tab report.
Thank you, Chair. TAB met on May 17th for the Chair's report. Chair Hovland reported on a May 8th meeting he had with the U.S. Conference of Mayors on changes that are occurring in transit ridership. And use is increasing during the day throughout the U.S. Prior to COVID, 5% of people were working from home, and it is up to 30%. People on site at office buildings is at 60%, with hybrid many coming in 2 to 3 days a week at 28.8%, and fully working from home 11.5%. Almost 1 million people have left large city centers and are not coming back. There is shifting in retail spending going from big cities to suburbs. Rents and home values have surged in the suburbs. Public transit journeys have fallen by 30%. Longer run technology will continue to build momentum for work from home. And large cities will continue to see a reduction in density at the city core. And there will be a conversion of office space to residential. And vehicle miles traveled are up. And they're seeing that with continued technology development and the pandemic accelerated changes, were already just accelerating what was happening. For the MnDOT report, Michael Barnes reported that the Metro Towards Zero Deaths workshop had over 100 participants. And MnDOT has now reached 20 years of TZD efforts. And to date, that's at the May meeting of TAB, there were 88 fatalities in Minnesota with 28 in the metro area. For the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Frank Kolach reported that MPCA received a $3 million planning grant from the Inflation Reduction Act to access funding through EPA for implementation projects. Solicitations from the EPA are expected to open in early 2024. Metropolitan Council received $1 million for a planning grant for the metro area, and tribal governments will be also accessing funding. For the Metropolitan Airports Commission, Kyle Cummins reported that airline seats are up 15% over last year and are now at 90% of the pre-pandemic level. And 22 domestic routes have started. For the Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barber reported the groundbreaking for the B-Line BRT on the 8th, which will replace Route 21. Construction will be completed and service operational in 2024. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported that the suburban providers through March, the monthly motor vehicle size tax resets are overperforming with a projection average increase of 11%. From a revenue standpoint, this is good news. And the suburban providers are working on improving efficiencies by working together, for example, on vehicle parts sharing, as well as knowledge sharing for vehicle types. And their ridership is all increasing. Let's see what else. For Southwest Transit, they had started an on-demand partnership with Lyft and have already, as of that meeting, had completed 175 rides and are budgeted for 1,200 rides. For business items, TAB approved a Streamlined tip amendment for new projects, which added 1 MnDOT project for traffic studies consultant services and 17 of the regional solicitation projects for 2024, and also approved a Streamlined tip amendment for the fare collection equipment for Metro Transit. They approved the scope change that came through TAC, the request for the Minnesota 65 intersection improvements that were reduced. And then they also approved the release of the HSIP and the regional solicitation. They approved all these items as they had been approved by TAC. And then they also released the 2024 to 2027 tip for public comment. And then they had 2 info items, the MSP Airport long-term plan and the stakeholder engagement updates, and then also an information item on the protect funds. And that was it for tab.
Any questions for Elaine on the tab report from committee members? Seeing none, we will move to TAC report on TAC exec. We did meet this morning. And before I turn it over to Joe to walk through the 2 streamlined tip amendments for us today, couple of conversations. Thank you to everyone who responded to the survey about remote meetings versus in-person meetings. Based on our first roll call today, I sure hope we don't have a whole bunch of TAC members sitting in chambers downtown right now. But we will process those responses and get a more thorough summary ready for TAC. It sounds like the general consensus from the group is that there's some desire to have in-person meetings, not necessarily on a regular schedule, but when maybe higher profile items are coming forward to the committee. So we'll take a look at that and again, share more detailed results with you all coming up at a future meeting. We are most likely going to be canceling our TAC meeting in July. It's Wednesday, the 4th of July is on Tuesday. We're anticipating folks will be enjoying some family time, perhaps some vacation time, and we often do cancel the July meeting, so we are looking to do that. So watch for that. And then we had a pretty good conversation about the active transportation funding that is coming to TAB as a result of the transportation bill this legislative session. So we'll be providing some more information on that. Most likely working to have the conversation come through funding and programming and TAC in July, and then moving forward to TAB in August. We're trying to tie that together with the finalization of the 2024 regional solicitation packet itself, because we do anticipate that some of these new funds will need to be allocated as part of that next solicitation. So those of you might want to check in with your funding and programming members and take a look at your own schedules for tomorrow afternoon. Is it tomorrow afternoon or next week? Next Thursday.
June 15th,
afternoon.
yeah.
Funding and programming was noticed to be canceled next Thursday afternoon. We're looking to probably reinstate that time and invite both funding and programming and TAC to attend that time for information about these new funds. And then again, kind of formalizing the process through the committees starting in July. So I'll just pause there to see if there are any questions from committee members before I have Joe lead us through the 2 streamlined tip amendments today. And I'm not seeing any hands come up. So, Joe, I will turn it over to you for 2023-35.
Thank you, Chair. I want to zoom in on this, but WebEx is in the way. Anyway, these are simple, fairly simple tip amendment items. We'll start with 2023-35. So we have 2 actions adding new projects to the tip. The first project to add to the tip right here is from Sherburne County, which kind of might strike some folks as weird, but there is that small piece of Sherburne County along with Wright County that is in our MPO area, and projects there do need to be in the tip. So this is a request for the addition of a project to reconstruct a 2.7 mile portion of CSAH 33, otherwise known as Sherburne Avenue and Elk River. It's funded with STPBG funds, but not through the regional solicitation, as we don't even fund up there through the regional solicitation. So this is state programmed funding, sponsored by Sherburne County. And then the second project is MVTA and they want to add the Burnsville Bus Garage renovation Phase 3. Again, this is not regional solicitation funding. This is FTA Section 5339 funding. So fairly simple addition of 2 new projects. And with that, I would be here for questions.
Any questions for Joe on 2023-35 with adding 2 new projects to the tip? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, this is Joe with Anoka. I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Twitter, second.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call.
Well, I know McPherson's here now, thanks to the motion. McPherson,
Aye.
Robgent, or Carver County. Labrie,
Aye, can you hear me?
Ken, not
Okay,
as
good.
well as some others, but I can hear you. Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Kotsukos,
Aye.
Steve Peterson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Adam Harrington, are you here yet? Okay, Crockett,
Aye.
Ao,
Aye.
Reef, are you here? Okay, Fighton,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Eddie, are you here? Sabota,
Aye.
Turner Bargain,
Aye.
Heel,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ellis,
Aye.
Kozlucher,
Aye.
or Brodhead. I apologize. I thought I might have heard a response. Kozlucher.
Aye.
Thank you. Hagen.
Aye.
I don't believe Plymouth is here. Beckwith.
Aye.
Hager.
Aye.
Mayel.
Aye.
Nick Peterson.
Aye.
And Dermody.
Aye.
Chair, the ayes seem to have it.
All right, so 2023-35 is approved and we'll move to 2023-36, Joe.
Thank you. So this is a streamlined tip amendment reflecting a couple of changes to the tip. I call it cost increases because both projects or both requests include cost increases. This first one is a MnDOT request to increase its the cost of its Stone Arch Bridge repair project. The change is actually being reflected as we speak in the draft 24 through 27 tip. This change is being made to reflect that in case the project is let prior to approval of the 24 through 27 tip, and you can see the numbers here being changed. This is STP funding that does not come through the regional solicitation. Next, and here's the next map. Next is a MnDOT's requesting a cost increase and the replacement of one additional bridge being added here in the underline for its Minnesota Highway 65 bridge replacement project in Spring Lake Park in East Bethel. It's funded by the NHPP, National Highway Performance Program, and therefore not through the regional solicitation. And that's it. Pretty simple. With that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Joe on these items? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, this is Paul. I move approval.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second, Nick Peterson.
Thank you, Nick. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call.
McPherson,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Lightner,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Potsukos,
Aye.
Steve Peterson rather,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Harrington. Oh, sorry, I had that here. Crockett,
Aye.
Ayo,
Aye.
Whiten,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Turner Bargain,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Hagen,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Nick Peterson,
Aye.
and
Aye.
Dermody. Dermody, you
Aye.
beat me. So I did skip anybody that hadn't responded yet. So if you were here and didn't, I didn't call you, let us know. Otherwise, the ayes seem to have it.
Okay, that item carries, and that concludes the executive committee report. And I'll turn it over to Scott to provide an update on the planning and TPP technical work group.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. The TAC planning last met May 11th, and we had a presentation by the MAC staff on the MSP long range airport plan. TAC planning is also meeting tomorrow to hear updates from staff about the urban area boundary. And in July, TAC planning will have action items on the urban area boundary update and two regionally significant roadway projects to be amended into the TPP. The TPP technical work group continues to meet regarding the 2050 TPP update. There were workshops held in May that were attended by TAB and TAC members to discuss goals for the 2050 TPP. There was one virtual session, actually two virtual sessions on that. And TAC with the TPP work group will also meet tomorrow, and we will get an update on the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program, and there will also be a brief update on safety planning work and an update on some reorganization of the 2050 TPP chapter structure. Thank you.
Great. Are there any questions for Scott on that report? Seeing none, we will move on to funding and programming. Michael is not here today, but Vice Chair Carl Keel will be doing this report. Carl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 4 items for consideration today. The first is a program year extension request from 4 project sponsors, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, Hennepin County, and MnDOT, for projects that are related to a much larger mega project, and these projects are most efficiently delivered at the same time as that larger project. Would note that this phenomenon of projects, smaller projects being kind of absorbed into larger projects happened in the past, but it seems to be something that's happening more frequently recently. Would note that all 4 of these projects have previously received a program year extension. They went from 23 to 26, and our policy, our program year policy, says that projects will only be granted 1 extension. So the request today is for an exemption to that policy and to allow a program year extension to 2029 for all 4 of these projects. Again, the projects are most appropriately delivered as part of the larger project, and the committee had discussed this exemption and is recommending approval.
Thank you, Carl. Is there any questions for Carl before? Okay, I see Joe. Oh, Joe had his hand up and then lowered it. Any questions before we try to get a motion on the table from the group?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Joe. Sorry, I just trigger happy there with my hand. Quick question for you, Carl. So I know we've talked about this one. I think it was just a year and a half ago when they did that extension, or 2 years ago. Playing devil's advocate on this one, it looks like there's an opportunity here for a couple of those projects. If you scroll the screen down a little bit, I think Joe's got control of that. You can see that 2 of them were awarded the $7 million maximum at the time during those solicitations. Would it be better to ask these projects to reapply in a future year when the project is moving ahead? And maybe now's a good time to get an update on this project. Where is the 252 corridor project at? Is 2029 far enough out, or do they need more time for that? So 2 questions in one. First, what's the status of that project? And second off, do we really want to do a second extension here, or do we want to kind of propose that they reapply?
My understanding is that that larger project is funded largely in part by a Court of Commerce project that has a deadline of delivery in 2029. And it's my understanding that the project is proceeding to be delivered in that time frame. But I believe the project sponsors are here and would be able to answer more detailed questions about the projects themselves.
Thank you. I see Carla has her hand up. I know she's one of the project sponsors. If there are any other project sponsors in the meeting who would like to respond to the question, we'll start with Carla, and then Jesse has got his hand up as well. Go ahead, Carla.
Thanks, Jenny. So I just wanted to, we did consider, Joe, or ask the question if these individual projects could reapply. But because they are going through the environmental process, they're now considered as one project. So it's my understanding, and if Elaine's on, she could answer this better than I could probably, but it's my understanding that now that they're considered one project, we couldn't apply separately for those.
That is what, on a federal level, we would, I think they now consider them one project because they've all been combined. And as a now one major project, I think the only ones that the 3 intersections would be combined, but I think the one that's a trail may be different, but it kind of depends on, it's a federal designation that they are now one project.
Okay, so it's more of a fiscal restraint based on a full funding package. I assume it's fully funded?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to guess that it's fully funded at this point.
Yeah.
But by putting them in an EIS as one project, they became one project.
Yeah, I think that is really what has, I mean, there's a lot of factors that's gone into these kind of intertwined projects, but it is really the environmental review that that is taking the most amount of time. So it went from it's now going through the environmental impact statement, which is a very extensive environmental review, so that it's a great process, but it just is very time consuming. So I appreciate that consideration.
Okay, Jesse, I just wanted to check with you. You had your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, Carla basically hit everything on the head for that I was going to bring up as well. Is that, yeah, I mean, they're just, we can't reapply for the individual projects anymore. And at this point, yeah, we had to restart from a EA environmental assessment and redo everything and that delayed us back 2 years. So that's why we have the request. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Just thought I'd couple of little things. So the project is not fully funded at this point in time. We don't know what the project is, so we don't know what it is we have to fund, but we do have COC money to it, but we don't know what, right? There's a gap because we don't know what the project is. So MnDOT will still have to find some funding for it. So just that point. And then Joe was a little bit of a schedule request, right? We're we've closed the formal public comment period for the scoping decision document. Should be working on that through, I don't know, August, September. Then we'll be looking to go into the federal process, right? The NOI to start, I don't know, we'll just say the first quarter of next year. Likely all of 24, all of 25 and into 26 for the DEIS process. Then going into design, so that 28 timeframe is really what we're looking at right now for being able to be into letting of a project. So the 28, 29 funding timeframe is, we'd be pushing into late 28. So funding for 29 would be right in line with where we're at. So quick high level little synopsis of the schedule. Let me know if you wanted more than that, Joe.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Madam Chair. And those that responded, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Mark, could you really just quick, I think it's important because the project has corridors of commerce funding, there are certain timeframes associated with corridors of commerce funding, even though you're not fully funded in the project as a whole. You just want to talk a little bit about that for the group?
Yeah, I just want to look at that because I think we've got our COC funding in 29 also. April, am I lying on that part of it?
Yeah, 29 is the latest that we can spend the quarters of commerce funding. So we're really targeting spending that and delivering that project in 29. If we are unable to deliver it in 29, we'll have to have some conversations with our legislative folks. So 29 is kind of our need to deliver.
Right, yeah, and if we're right, like April says, if we don't hit that 29 timeframe, right, we have to go through the legislative process to either get an extension or, whatever, and that, it would have to happen before 29 because what requirements we have to get to the legislature, give it to them 1 year, and then they would act on it the following year of session. So we do have to keep an eye on that.
Great, thank you. And I'm seeing the queue. We have some TAC members, but I do see another project sponsor, Liz Heyman. Did you want to say something before I go to additional questions from TAC members?
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, just quickly, Liz Heyman, Brooklyn Center. I think the others already hit the nail on the head here, but just wanted to share Brooklyn Center is very supportive and thankful for MnDOT for moving through the EIS process, which, while a large and lengthy process, is important for this just really large and important regional project. So definitely excited to see this one moving ahead. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks, Liz. All right, go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I'm generally supportive of the request, but what is the likelihood that, because the original year and the requested year are 6 years apart, that the award amount is going to be insufficient due to, cost escalation, and they'll be back in front of, TAC and TAB looking for some additional money?
Good question.
Perhaps
see.
Mark would be able to answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the best I can say onto this one, right, is that we are really hoping to hit this time frame, right? Prices will change. The thinking that with those having been the small projects and we're incorporating into the big project with the corridors of commerce funding that we have with this funding, just really hoping that at that point in time is when MnDOT either goes after other grant fundings like IIJA or MnDOT bringing money to the table, and that they would just all be a part of the greater package. I don't know that the applicants, I don't know that they were going to be coming back and looking to increase those. It would really be more about the project looking for the funds.
I would concur with that. I think it becomes a risk factor is our process here doesn't really have an opportunity for adding more funds unless funds become available in each program year and we go through that process. So I think it becomes more of a risk factor. in terms of delivering on these projects. Steve.
Yep, I would agree with what's been said. That's a great question by Charlie here, but if it's up to the local project sponsors to deliver any gap funding that may persist here with inflation or other things. Just wanted to pull forward one comment from F&P that Carl touched on a little bit here, but we are seeing the need to open back up this program year policy. I think there's a general understanding that it was written for one project of being able to kind of deliver in isolation and not tied to these larger mega projects. So we're from a staff level anticipating either a small group or back through F&P that we're going to need to take some time to kind of better understand the current landscape and how these may be two paths of that we're seeing, kind of the individual project versus larger projects or regional substation projects tied to larger mega projects, how we should think about that as a region, as a emerging issue that's probably going to persist here. So we can expect a small group or F&P to kind of tackle that later this summer. We're going to, after this goes through.
Thank you, Steve. And building on your comments, I'll say for myself, I'm supportive of the items proceeding here, but I would ask TAC members who might be contemplating putting a motion forward that we tweak the proposed motion in your packet a little bit to recommend that these move forward if that's what you're thinking. But if you're doing that, to make a note that this is outside of our current process due to our current policy, due to extenuating circumstances, just so there's a record, given that this is outside of that policy. Brian.
Yeah, just one question for the project folks. Would I understand that you all are still under the executive direction of EIS as being limited to a 2-year time window? Is that right? Does that help mitigate this issue at all?
Mark, are you best positioned to answer that?
I can certainly take a shot at it. So, right, the term limited is maybe a little bit, right? That's kind of more of a guide, Brian, into the fact that that's what they want. Right now, I think we're at about 2.5 years, and the Federal Highway Administration is fine with that, so long as we're moving forward and making progress. If we start sitting around twiddling our thumbs and not moving forward, not working on it, then they're going to have problems with it. But just because we're outside of the 2-year time frame isn't going to null and void anything.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? I got an echo. Who's got their speaker on? Any further questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion. This is Keel from Bloomington, that we approve the request for an exemption to our program year policy for these 4 projects to move them from 26 to 29.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Carl and Lissa. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion?
This is Lisa again. Just want to add, Jenny, based on your comment about amending the motion to make it clear that this is outside the policy. I don't think that should be in the motion, but I do think it makes sense to make sure the packet that goes to TAB adds that nuance that this is outside the policy. But TAB and F&P, or TAC and F&P recognize that, but also recognize that this is kind of a strange issue and that we're all open to, readdressing that policy.
Thank you. And I do think, Carl, your motion does cover it either way by saying we're recommending approval of the moving of the program year with an exception to the policy. So I think we're covered either way, but we will make this clear to TAB. And Steve, please advise if we need a formal direction to F&P to take another look at this policy, or if we can just put that kind of on the list. We've already asked F&P to look at the scope change policy as well, if you all recall. So any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, then all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Jill.
McPherson.
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Elbows,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Kotsukos,
Aye.
D. Peterson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Harrington, no, Harrington's not here. Crockett,
Aye.
Ayo,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Turner Bargan,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Kozlucher,
Aye.
Hagen,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Nick Peterson,
Aye.
and Dermody.
Aye.
All right, that item passes and we'll move forward to tab and we can move on to 2023-31, Carl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request, a similar request for a program year extension for the City of Brooklyn Park for their CSAH 103 project. Like the other projects, this is an example of a project that was awarded through our solicitation that is being absorbed by a larger project, the larger project being the Blue Line LRT extension. And like the other projects, this project had previously received an extension. It was originally program year 22, was extended to 25, and they are requesting that it be extended to 2026, again, to coincide with the larger project which is attached. I think with that, the committee is recommending approval, and I'll make a motion at the time that it's appropriate.
Okay, great. Any questions for Carl on this item? Okay, seeing no questions.
Excuse me, sorry, Chair.
Yep.
I do have one question, Kathleen Mayo, Minneapolis. So the 2026, this is aligned to be in line with Blue Line Light Rail but that project timeline is uncertain at the moment, correct? Can you just talk maybe a little bit to that piece?
So again, I think as we discussed this in our executive committee, I think it's acknowledged that that project has significant risks and challenges yet in its delivery. But at this point, that is the best known date of delivery. And so that's why we're proceeding with it for 2026. Others, I don't know if there's other comments to that.
So project sponsor have any comments they'd like to make regarding timeline?
Thanks, Chair. Jesse Struve, Brooklyn Park. I mean, that again, to Carl's point, that's, after talking with Hennepin County and the Met Council team on this project, that's again the best timeline that we have right now. And it sounds like that's what they're trying to shoot for. And again, there's lots of risks, lots of things can happen between now and then, but that's the best info that we have.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions from TAC members on this item? If not, Carl, I would entertain that motion, and perhaps the same conversation we had on the last one in terms of the policy would be helpful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we recommend approval of Brooklyn Park's request for a program year extension for the CSAH 103 project from 25 to 26, acknowledging that it is a request for an exemption to our program year policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Innocent Ayo.
Thank you,
MPC,
Innocent.
yeah.
Any further discussion from committee members? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call.
McPherson,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Witter. I think I heard that. Kotsukos,
Aye.
Peterson, Steve,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Harrington. Oh, sorry. Crockett,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Turner Bergen,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Hagen,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Nick Peterson,
Aye.
and Dermody.
Aye.
That item carries. Thank you. And we will move to 2023-32, Carl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that has to do with Protect funding, which is a new funding source through the IIJA program, beginning funding in 2024. The challenge with this is that the monies are becoming available and there is not a great deal of time. There is no time to go through a full solicitation for these early years. So the proposal before us today is to spend about $14.5 million of these Protect funds to fully fund a number of projects that have been previously selected through our regional solicitation and which have components that meet the Protect criteria. Protect is our monies directed to very specific items within a project having to do with resiliency and climate change type items. This is a somewhat complicated item, and so I would ask for a lifeline to Steve Peterson, if that's appropriate, to fill in more of the details.
Thank
Sure,
you,
thanks.
Carl. Steve?
Yeah, thanks. And maybe if Joe can pull up the PowerPoint here, it's worth running through a few of those slides here so people kind of fully understand what they're voting on. We do have Brian Shackleton from MnDOT Central Office. He's program manager for the Protect funds statewide. If you do have specific questions on Protect, and that was helpful at F&P here to have him be part of it here. So again, a new federal program. Carl gave the introduction there. Next slide here, Joe. And there's a few chunks of money, and today we're going to focus on 25 through 27. So you can see we did have 2024 money. We allocated that to existing projects, selected the regional solicitation, allowed us to pay down over programming. That money is shown in the draft tip. So that was good from our programming perspective. Today we're going to be focusing on the $14.5 million for 25 through 27. That will give us enough time to kind of jump to the next solicitation cycle. What you can see there is the 2024 regional solicitation cycle is program years 28 and 29. So we do have language in the application to better get at Protect eligibility, and it will be done more behind the scenes. And that was a really good question at TAC Executive. I think Brian had asked that. Typically, we assign projects funding behind kind of more after the fact. We select projects, and then we assign money based on eligibility behind the scenes to projects as it goes into the tip. And we typically would have done that with Protect as well. But as we kind of navigated through IIJA and MnDOT through their processes, the timing didn't work out. So it was more kind of February timeframe when MnDOT decided to give the local partners, the regional partners, some of this Protect money. So that's why there's a little bit of mismatch here of the years and the timing and how we probably normally would do things. And then we do have a specific scope item in the regional solicitation evaluation, which will start here in August. And that scope item, we'll be asking the consultant to lead the region and its committees through a process to best allocate the protect funding, and that could be a brand new category in the solicitation, or it could be something different. But we have, we do have quite a bit of time and money allocated to kind of figure out how do we attack this this new funding source, protect. So next slide, please. Joe, one more down. Maybe it's a little delayed on my screen here. There we go. So as Carl alluded to, we can't fund entire projects. It's specific elements within larger projects, and that's really the challenge of protect. Next slide, please. Last month we brought a few options to you, and option one was to use it to essentially pay down over programming on past selected projects. That no longer is a good option because we actually need projects funded in those earlier years. We don't have over programming to pay down now that we've recommended approval of the 2 program year shifts here in the last 2 action items. So that's going into slide 6. So that leads the focus to the F&P recommendation, which is shown as option 2, starting on slide 7 here. So what we did at a staff level is we went back to the 2022 regional solicitation, looked at the next unfunded project in each of the 12 application categories, dug into those projects, and we came up with 3 projects that had protect eligible items on them. 2 of those 3 projects wanted to kind of move forward or thought they were a good match for protect. One of those, spot mobility project, did drop off here at F&P. So we did go back at the request of TAC last month and asked those project sponsors and said, here's the protect eligibility. You may not have categorized your expenses in the regional solicitation application exactly to match protect eligibility. So go back, here's what's eligible. Go back and tell us how much of your request is eligible. And so in doing so, both of these projects that were next on their respective lists had enough eligible elements to kind of fully fund the request. So that's a good thing in my mind, versus giving them kind of partial funding on things. So total eligible costs, 2 projects, next 2 on each of those lists, $17 million. Next slide. So again, you may remember from the opening, we have about $14.5 million of protect available. Now we've got $17 million of projects. Fortunately, we did free up some money especially with the 252 program year shift that you just approved. And so we can use some of that additional 252 money to match the protect money. And this is the F&P recommendation again, match that to fully fund both of those requests. So $14.5 million of protect plus roughly $2.5 million of STP in 2026. And you combine those 2 and you can fully fund both Carver County and Washington County request. So that's the recommendation that F&P put forth. We did want to make a note after we kind of looked at the math again after the meeting, the F&P meeting, and did notice that we still have about $1.2 million left of STP funds in 2026, which you could use to fund additional projects, or you could push to the next regional solicitation. So that was not a recommendation from F&P. It's more just in adding up the numbers after the meeting, we noticed we got a little bit of money left. Do you want to do something with it or not? So our first step there is to look at the program year policy on the next slide. So again, this would be the future program year funds. Looking at the second paragraph there, this is exactly as shown in the policy. The first priority for use of future year funds will be to include the funds in a future tab solicitation. When not possible, tab should first consider items 1 through 3 and 5 from the list that's on the first page. It can also consider other options such as selecting an unfunded project from the most recent solicitation that could be delivered within the time frame, or other options like setting up a special solicitation, etc. So we're a little bit in the gray area as to what we should do with that extra 2026 money, we certainly will use it in some capacity, but you could allocate it now as part of this action, or you could push it to the next solicitation cycle, and I think we'd be just fine either way. But did want to at least point that out to the committee if they did want to think about that or discuss that a little bit more. But probably a true reading of this first priority for use in the future year funds would be to include the funds in a future tab solicitation, if at all possible. I think that would lead us to perhaps push it. That's what we heard from TAC executive a little bit, but did want to have that conversation. So again, this is a tough one to get through here at this level. So I'm wondering, we're going to need help at the tab level too, to kind of, for people to fully understand it. But again, the recommendation from before you today that Carl's presenting, distribution of $14.5 million of protect funding for fiscal years 25 through 27, along with $2.5 million in 2026 STP funding to fully fund the request for Highway 5 Carver County, Lake Minnetonka Arboretum project in Washington County, County Road 19A 100th Street projects from the 2020 regional solicitation cycle. So with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it back to you and see if folks have questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl and Steve. Any questions from committee members on this item? Go ahead, Lissa.
Thanks. Appreciate the presentation and the information. I think even though I've discussed this is one of our projects, I struggle to explain this. So it seems to be getting easier and easier as the months go on. One, obviously, I will support this F&P recommendation, but wondering if we want to kind of separate the two discussions here is just moving forward with this F&P recommendation, talking about that, and then tackling a conversation about the extra funds. Particularly thinking about this going to tab, this is an exceptionally complex conversation with the protect alone, let alone grouping it, a motion with the quote unquote extra money on top of that. So just a suggestion to the committee, but open to that. I'm just thinking about how to prepare my commissioner for tab if these things are combined.
As the one who would try to explain this to tab before I call in my lifeline, I support your recommendation, Lissa. All right, Chad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what Lissa said about separating. I would like to just show support for a potential another trail project, which always is a category that seems like we can't fund enough. Even we did fund a lot of trail projects, but would this funding have been available? We probably, now that we're looking at funding 2 additional road projects, I think it would look good to also fund some multimodal projects. It seems to be this next one on the list, the Shingle Creek Regional Trail, is really a pretty straightforward project of upgrading a sidewalk to make a great connection, I believe on an RBTN Tier 1 alignment. So I think that would be great use of this money. The money is there for the region to spend. So the sooner that we spend that and get those benefits, the better. So I would be in support of that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chad. Go ahead, Carl.
Would just note that if we don't deal with the $1.18 million excess of STP funds, it really gets distributed based on our existing policy, which is outlined and is clear. So I don't know if we even have to talk about it with TAB. It seems that it will resolve itself based on our existing policy.
That is true. I agree with that, Carl. Any further questions or comments from the group? Chad, is your hand up from before, or do you want to say something else?
It was up from before. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this item? Okay, so Steve, maybe you could clarify for the group then, given Carl's comment, how would we present this to TAB? Would we present this as a straight up let's assume the motion that's made is the one that F&P is recommending. So there's no information in there about the leftover STP funds. How would this be presented to TAB? Just kind of for the group's awareness.
Sure. Yeah, I think we would kind of show how the books balance to date, and we would, if that's if the F&P recommendation moves forward, we would outline in the action transmittal that TAC says to follow the policy, which would result in that being put into the next regional solicitation cycle. I think we would probably leave it at that.
Go ahead, Chad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the year of these funds, given that we won't be, it's almost, we just finished a cycle. So would these be kind of the advanced construction funds, because they'd be early in that round, which takes special projects to get up and running quickly. So just a question on that for maybe Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Chad, for the question. And that's a little bit why we brought his question gets a little to the point of why we wanted to bring it up with TAC and discuss it more, because the next solicitation will be done in July, August of next year. So that's the beginning of program year 2025. This little chunk of money is for 2026. So, a little less than 2 years for a federal project. And not that we won't be able to do it or find a project that could do it, but it is limiting our options by waiting another year. So, we won't waste the money. That's maybe the first point. We'll find a use for the money, but it is limiting. The less time you have to develop a federal project, it does have some limitations to it. Who could do it?
Could we pull the program year policy up onto the screen if we have that handy? I know your slide noted, options 1 through 5 from above, but I don't know that we saw. Here we go. Thank you. All right, let's review this quick. How we move through this.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is really what Colleen Brown and Dan Erickson do as money becomes available. The first thing they see is just to maybe highlight a few things on this list here is what projects can move forward. And so we did that informally. We did ask our project partners that were given a 2027 program year in the last regional solicitation cycle. So that was the last year. And we asked whatever number of projects were in that year. At this time, we may potentially have 2026 money. Would anybody be interested in moving forward? We got we didn't get anything back other than we're holding tight in our year. So a lot of people wanted that last year, for good reasons, for local match or other reasons. So at this time, we didn't have projects that we could pull forward. And that's really the thrust of many of these items that 1 through 5 here. The last one, 5, is what we do so we don't send it back to the federal government is we can look back at projects that could accept additional federal dollars and up to the maximum of 80%. And, Colleen gets an engineer's estimate from them. And we always have projects that are overmatching local funds. So that's really the last step in the process. Number 5 is, and we do that on occasion every couple of years, is with usually a small amount of money, we're giving it out to projects to get them closer to the 80%. And that's really the last ditch effort, but it's something we do.
So can you clarify, Steve, is that per the policy? Are we supposed to do that before we pick another new project?
Well, let's slide to the next page then here. And so what's outlined in that 1 through 5 is for current year funds. Now so that's kind of what, if a project gives money back in the current year, this is future program year. So I'm reading it, second line of second paragraph. When not possible, tab, first consider items 1 through 3 and 5 from the above list. It can also consider, so it's it's more vague in its description, but I would say when not possible, tab should first consider, that would lead me to go back to that numbered list. As I think you're pointing to. Elaine, would you agree? That, as the tab coordinator here?
Elaine?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the language as you go into the future program years talks about bringing options to tab, but if you look at it, it says first try to use it in a future solicitation. Next is to go back to this numbered list, and perhaps third would be to think of a special solicitation or going back to the unfunded list. Is that kind of your reading of it?
Correct. For the first three, the one thing when we reviewed this at Tech Exec, the way that paragraph is worded is this is how they do first, but they can consider other options. So is other options considered only if this doesn't work? But 5 will always work.
Mm-hmm.
So it can also consider other options. Being select another project, set up another solicitation. So with that wording, so its first priority is a future. So that, like you mentioned, if it's possible. And then go to 1 to 3. I think it's vague when it says can also consider other options. And selecting another project is another option.
Okay, so
if they've done this before, we did that. I'm trying to think what year we went back and added some projects when more funding was available. And it might have been way back in 2014.
Yep.
all right, I see a hand up. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. One option that other ATPs and MPOs have explored is acknowledging that there's not a large sum of money here for Protect, and that traditional use of these funds is to fund projects at certain levels. Other places have created funds for specific climate vulnerabilities, and elsewhere they've looked at failing stormwater systems, and I know that that's an endemic challenge around the metro, especially with aging infrastructure. But that might be a different path as opposed to just simply pulling from a list of projects that were not developed primarily as resilience projects. And I'm not intending to insert myself into this conversation as much as to offer an insight into how other ATPs have explored this option, which is how do you consider other options?
Madam Chair, this is Lyndon. We're not talking about the Protect money here. We're talking about the other money that's available, right? For this 1.4 million.
Well, that's what we were discussing, but it's all kind of jumbled together into one conversation right now, and we could clean this up by having a motion put on the table to just deal with the selection of the projects associated with the Protect funds, which are immediately available. And Brian, to your point, I think there's going to be additional conversation when there's time to figure out how to allocate that future year Protect funding, because we just don't have time for a separate solicitation right now that might be aimed at a particular type of projects like you're referring to. So Lyndon, back to you. We could clean this up by taking that action first and then having a conversation and potentially a separate motion and action related to the remaining STP funds of $1.18 million.
I think that's a good idea.
Madam Chair, to that point, I would make a motion that we distribute the 14.5 monies of Protect along with 2.48 million in STP monies to fund the two projects named.
Thank you, Carl. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Linden.
Thank you, Lyndon. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this motion related to the $14.5 million of Protect and the 2 point whatever million dollars, I forget, of the remaining STP from the actions we took earlier, selecting the two projects that were already part of our 2022 regional solicitation? Any further discussion? Seeing none.
No, Madam Chair, but I will maybe just ask if Joe can put the PowerPoint back up so people can actually see the motion that they're voting on here. Last slide. Yep. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call.
McPherson,
Aye.
Robjan,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Mareck for Isaacson, aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Witter,
Aye.
Kotsukos,
Aye.
Steve Peterson,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Brockett,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Reef. Oh, sorry, did it all day. Fighting,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
pedestrian Turnerberg and left. I think I saw Scipione. Apologize if I got that wrong. You can vote if you want. Maybe I didn't see you.
Aye.
Thank you. Keel,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Omi,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Hagen,
Aye.
Kozlucher.
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Nick Peterson,
Aye.
and Dermody.
Aye.
Okay, that item carries, and we'll move forward to tab. And I might be out of bounds on Robert's Rules of Order here. I'm not sure, but does the committee wish to have further conversation about the remaining $1.18 million of STP funding in 2026? Go ahead, Lissa.
What do we need to do that today? I guess we've like talked in circles a little bit and the options don't seem particularly clear. I also want to give entities and projects a little bit of time who might be the ones up for this and for this funding to kind of think through this. So I don't know if it makes sense just to table this discussion and bring it back, or if this does need to be, and also knowing that F&P has not waited on this, so it seems a little odd for TAC to throw something to tab that F&P hasn't weighed on, but you know, correct me if I'm wrong, there are other people weigh in, but I think if we can pause this and tackle it at a next meeting and make sure F&P weighs in, I think that's generally my preference, and particularly for staff to maybe get their heads around what our options are, because it seems like you all are not super clear to us on what we can do.
Sure. So my understanding, if we take no action today or make no recommendation to tab, is that these funds will be reallocated following our existing policy, short of any future action by tab. And the future policy does appear to be somewhat unclear, and tab could use their prerogative to select a project. So that's my understanding of what is going to happen. So tab will be presented with the same information in terms of the available STP funds in 2026, and it will be their prerogative to allocate that or follow the policy. Chad?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, if there was a motion to give recommendations to TAB, I think this committee could at least provide some guidance on the options. That might help because that sounds like that discussion is going to occur. So I think it might be helpful, and maybe that's where Met Council staff could help us. That would it be helpful, and maybe to present this item to say that this discussion occurred and here are some options to consider, and if considered selecting an unfunded project, here are the next ones in line that would fit that. I believe the last solicitation, we kind of funded all the pedestrian projects and safe routes to school. This would be the one being discussed would be the next trail project. We just hit a few more road projects, but there are a few others. I guess staff would have to tell us if any of those would kind of fit in this range, but that would give them a chance at having a better discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a friendly amendment to that suggestion and kind of thinking about Lissa's concerns. This group could make a recommendation to TAB that this item come back through the technical committees for further discussion and recommendation. Because I don't know that Met Council staff have all the information here for us to discuss the range of options and put a good summary together for TAB. So it could be just noted for TAB that, after F&P, it was discovered that these funds were available. The technical committees recommend that this be discussed at the next round of meetings and further information and recommendations be brought forward to TAB at their next meeting. Just a thought. Steve.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's kind of where I was going in my head too. I think you're onto something here, that decoupling these two items, which seemed like easy from a math perspective, but made it more complicated. So sending it back to funding and programming, I think, would be the best approach here to move forward. Yeah,
I agree. Go ahead, Carl.
So am I misunderstanding this? But oftentimes we have excess monies in a given program year, and we follow our process, and we don't suggest that people ought to consider adding new projects, or right. So I don't know why it's any different this time. I would just follow our normal process. I presume it happens fairly regularly, and then state aid follows the process and we resolve it.
Also true. Steve, did you want to say something with your hand up, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm putting it down. Thanks.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I think that, at least my understanding, the difference here is we've already kind of paid off future projects because of all the excess funding, and that's usually the go-to. So this is a little bit unique in that sense, that we're already starting to kind of fill those holes of over programming. But maybe I don't know the whole story there, but I think it is a little bit of a different year here as well with excess funding coming in. So just wanted to share my perspective.
I think that's true, Chad, but then option 5 comes into play, and I think there's plenty of projects that are in the program that could take more federal funding before reaching their 80/20 max. And I think, another perspective that was discussed at TAC Exec this morning that hasn't been discussed here is just the sheer number of projects that have been selected over the last solicitation plus that federal aid is working to deliver on. It's roughly double what they're normally delivering with all the additional funding, which is a great thing that's come with IIJA. So just some additional information to be aware of as we're talking about selecting projects or not. Go ahead, Chad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would second that option 5, but maybe if that is possible to do that in a more accelerated time frame, where it sounds like that's usually happens at the very end, last resort. So, but maybe if that could be accelerated and those projects could know sooner, I think that would help project development, and versus kind of having everything fully funded and getting a bonus at the end. So maybe that is that'd be something good to move forward and get taken care of. Thank you.
Steve, do you want to talk about how that happens?
Yeah, we've had some good conversation here, so I'm glad we complicated it, but I think bringing it to light was probably the best thing to do here. So I'm glad we did that. But I think what we would do in following this policy, we would put it first in the 2024 solicitation and try and find a project to use that 1.2 million. So that, and looking at the policy, that would be our first intent, and likely we could find a transit project that could use it. Once the money gets transferred to FTA, it's more flexible. So my guess is we're not going to get to that option 5. We would use the next solicitation cycle in some manner, or some other non-transit project that wants money right now, basically, that is ready to go. This is the gap funding. They're ready to build.
Okay, and that would cleanly follow the policy. Any further discussion on this item? All right, I am seeing none, so I will move us along to next item on the list. Hold on, I gotta find my list now. I took a lot of notes, so, okay, 2023-33, Carl?
Madam Chair, this is a relatively regular TIP amendment for the years 24 through 27. And we're do this every year as the TIP gets adjusted. And we're recommending that the draft 2024 to 2027 TIP be approved. And I would make that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Alice Hennepin.
Thank you, Chad. Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Joe?
McPherson.
Aye.
Robjan.
Aye.
Labrie.
Aye.
Hellos.
Aye.
Isaacson.
Mareck for Isaacson, aye.
Sorry, Scott. Jensen.
Aye.
Leitner.
Aye.
Witter.
Aye.
Otsukos.
Aye.
Peterson, Steve.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Crockett.
Aye.
AO.
Aye.
Reef. Sorry. Fighton.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Sabota.
Aye.
Scipione for Turner Bargain.
Aye.
Keel.
Aye.
Howley.
Aye.
Omi.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Oslucher.
Aye.
Hagen.
Aye.
Beckwith.
Aye.
Hager.
Aye.
Mayel.
Aye.
Nick Peterson.
Aye.
And Dermody.
Aye.
Thank you. That item carries, and that concludes the action items from funding and programming. Thank you, Carl. And we will move into our information items. We have Jonathan Ehrlich and Liz, not sure how to say the last name properly, so I'm not going to try. An information item on the transportation system performance evaluation.
Hello. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Good morning.
Yes, we can, Liz. Would you like me to go through the PowerPoint, or do you want to take over?
I can take over. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Just one moment, please. Okay. Are folks seeing my speaker notes or are they seeing just the PowerPoint?
Just the PowerPoint.
Great. Okay, so hi and good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Roten. I'm a data scientist at the Met Council. Today I'll be presenting the newly published Transportation System Performance Evaluation. The Transportation System Performance Evaluation, or the TSPE, is a comprehensive review of the Twin Cities transportation system. It's required by law to be completed before every TPP update. And it contains data from a variety of sources, including demographic context from the US Census, comparisons to peer regions using national data, data from local agencies and researchers, travel data from the Council's travel behavior inventory, and many more. In this presentation, I'm going to give a brief tour of the TSPE and highlight a few features and leave some time for questions. So the first part of this is that instead of making a document that is static and kind of lives on a web page, and to really get into it, you need to download a PDF and review things. We decided to go with a web native approach. And what that means is that we have an interactive data page that allows for more rigorous exploration of trends. We've also focused on improving the overall data management and taking the time to build clear, reproducible data flows and analyses. We plan to make the document entirely open source in the near future. And the quick overview is that there are 98 interactive charts and maps, 128 tables, and over 60 distinct data sources. The interactive is primarily web-based, but we do have a static PDF that's available upon request. And though this total number of figures is fewer than in previous editions of this report, we have focused more on quality over quantity. So the TSPE is organized by TPP goals, and these are current goals, and they can be easily changed in the future depending on how the TPP shakes out. In the interface, there is a search bar where you can find sections by topic, data source, or other keywords. And within each section, every objective is organized into sections. So for example, this section displays data from MnDOT's Omnibus survey and shows how perceptions of safety while walking have changed over time. And our planners have worked hard to bring essential context and key findings. So we aren't just showing you a plot that you draw conclusions from, but we also have the context that goes with that plot. All of the charts in the TSPE are interactive. So when you hover your mouse over a chart, a tooltip or a little box will appear with more detailed information, and it will usually be in a sentence. So it's very easily readable and understandable what you're looking at. And you can also navigate within the section by a little table of context on the far right. For this presentation, in every slide in the bottom left corner, there is a link that you can click on, and it will take you to the live version of the TSPE. And in that section where the chart is found. So that also makes it really easy to share a certain section. We've already been using, for example, the vehicle miles traveled section when there's kind of a general question of what is the per person VMT this year or over previous years. We know the exact section and we can send the person asking that question directly there. And one other export feature is that you can download static high-resolution PDFs of every plot that you see in the appendix. So this presentation is going to follow the order of the document as well. So it means that we will be reading through the document linearly, and we'll be jumping around between different measures, focusing on different transportation modes, as well as different types of comparisons. And that's intentional. So in the interest of time, I'm choosing only a handful of the 100 or so measures in the document. And we'll be showing those one by one. So where we stand in this moment in terms of data availability and what we see is the pandemic era, and it's inescapable. So in early 2023, we're looking at, for many of these measures, we're looking at data that ends often in 2021, sometimes in 2020, and occasionally in 2022. So we can see the impact that the pandemic has had and are still having, but it's less clear about what these trends tell us about the future and how exactly that's going to play out. And we also expect that the goals and objectives in the next TPP will change. And this document is modular, and we can reorganize and restructure it however is needed to reflect the new organization of the TPP when it's complete. So the first section is transportation system stewardship. And under that goal, there is an objective that is to efficiently preserve and maintain the regional transportation system in a state of good repair. The measures we present in the TSPE include bridge condition, pavement condition, runway condition, and transit state of good repair. And this, what you're looking at here, is pavement condition. This chart shows the total pavement for both interstate and national highway system roads, both in the metro and statewide, and shows how the percentage of the pavement that is in poor condition has changed over time. And in 2021, the Twin Cities metro, interstate, and national highway system miles, about 1.1% of all of the miles were in poor condition, whereas compared to statewide, it's about a little less than 0.6%. We also have this really great interactive map where you can see pavement conditions in the Twin Cities region over time by toggling the little input on the upper right. So you can see how pavement conditions have changed from 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 2021. And you can zoom in closer on certain roads and sections and see how they've changed over time. And this is an advantage of using an interactive online platform that you don't really get when you have a static map. The next objective is to operate the regional transportation system efficiently and cost effectively to connect people and freight to destinations. And one example of this is looking at transit productivity, or number of trips per revenue hour. There are a lot of ways to measure transit productivity, and we've chosen unlinked trips per revenue hour for this presentation, but there are other ways. So of course, in any plot you see of transit ridership over time is that there's a major ridership decline corresponding to the pandemic, and that also corresponds to a decline in transit productivity. And in this plot, you see in the dark blue line is the Twin Cities Metro, and then all of the light blue lines are peer regions. So you can see where we stand nationally, and we are generally in kind of the middle of the pack for most of the transit modes. It's also important to note that there has been an uptick in dial-a-ride productivity over this same time period, which is indicative of how transit is changing and how people use transit. The next section of the TPP, or the next goal, is safety and security. The first objective is to reduce the transportation system vulnerability to natural and human-caused incidents and threats, including climate change and terrorism. So measures related to this objective include monitoring the transit and freight trucking workforce, as well as a number of measures related to the impacts of global climate change, including heat, flooding, and extreme heat. This plot shows data that looks at annual precipitation in Minnesota from 1895 to 2021, showing both the trend and the average over time. The next objective is to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes and improve safety and security for all modes of passenger travel and freight transports. So this group has fairly recently seen detailed crash data, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We publish measures related to pedestrian and transit safety in the TSPE, as well as counts of at-grade rail crossings and data on crashes causing fatalities and serious injuries and the rates of these crashes. In this chart, we see the crash rate over time for both statewide and the metro area. Going to the next TPP goal, access to destinations. The first objective is to increase the number and share of trips taken using carpools, transit, bicycling, and walking. And we use various data sources, including the travel behavior inventory, as well as the National Household Travel Survey. This plot shows the percentage of all trips made by walking in the survey years 2010, 2019, and 2021, broken up by the Community Thrive designation. So you see that for most areas in the region, walking trips have increased from 2019 to 2021. This next plot is the mode participation rate and how it's changed over the past couple of years. So this measure calculates the portion of people in the region who take a particular mode even once. So for example, we see that in 2019, about we see in 2019, we see around 80% or so of adults drove at least once. Similarly, in 2018 to 2019, we were seeing about 19 to 20%. And again, this is the travel behavior inventory, so it's only trips. This is expanded and has some statistical backing to make this significant for the entire region. And it's just trips that are observed in the travel behavior inventory. Another example of the pandemic is that there's been a major increase in trip replacement behavior. So this is driven a lot by decreases in travel, which means that if you aren't traveling to complete various errands or tasks, you are doing something to replace that behavior from home. So this looks at the percentage of adults who engaged in a trip from behavior in the TBI 2018-19 and 2021. And you see on a typical weekday prior to the pandemic, we were looking at around 14% of people stayed home all day, whereas closer to 23% stayed home all day in 2021. And that similarly, a greater percent of adults are working from home 6 or more hours on a typical day, getting a delivery of food or receiving packages at home. Another measure of the same objective is transit ridership. So total transit ridership has decreased fairly steadily between 2015 and 2019, from about 9.95 million trips to 87 million trips, about a 1.8% decrease annually. So ridership then really dramatically increased in 2020 with the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and total ridership in 2021 was about 36 million trips, or roughly 42% of the 2019 levels. Another objective under access to destinations is the increased travel time reliability and predictability for travel on highway and transit systems. So one way of measuring this is by looking at the total minutes of delay on a highway per commuter. So this chart also puts us in the context of peer regions. And we see our trends in peak hour commuter delay have been about on par with the with other peer regions, and we're consistently higher than, say, Cincinnati and Milwaukee, but we are also consistently lower than Denver or Dallas. And of course, all commuter delay dropped drastically in 2020. We can also look at reliability on easy pass corridors. These were previously known as min-pass, and compare that to general purpose lanes. So the region builds easy pass corridors to provide reliable travel option, and we can see how effective that option is here. So this corridor, I-35 North, in the morning hours from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., we are comparing the travel time in minutes in 2021 on weekdays. The blue line is the easy pass, and the gray line is the general purpose, or the gray area is the general purpose lanes. So the travel time in the easy pass lanes is fairly steady and consistent across the entire morning, whereas the general purpose lanes are have much more of a fluctuation in travel time. The next goal is competitive economy, and one objective under competitive economy is to invest in a multimodal transportation system to attract and retain businesses and residents. So providing residents and businesses with safe and reliable multimodal travel options other than driving is one way to improve quality of life. In this section, we used national travel survey data to compare the travel choices that people make in other peer regions to those in the Twin Cities. And again, the Twin Cities are the bright, bold line, whereas the peer regions are the lighter, more thin lines. All right. So the transportation decisions that people make are shaped by the systems that are available to them. So a higher or lower proportion of trips made by non-auto mode is indicative of a system that is more or less supportive of multimodal travel. So here we're looking at the share of commuters who use non-auto modes and compare that to other large metro areas. Our trends pretty typically mirror national trends. So for 3 of the non-auto commute modes, the Twin Cities ranks near the middle of the pack for walking, transit, and bicycling. And in terms of rank, in 2019, we were 13th, 12th, and 12th for the greatest share of walk, transit, and work from home commutes. In the biking commute mode share, the Twin Cities performs somewhat better, ranking 7th of 25 for the greatest share of commutes by bicycle. And we can see that the working from home has increased over the same time period. This data goes to 2019, but other data sources in the TSPE have indicate an increase in working from home. This personally is one of my favorite plots in the entire TSPE. And it's looking at, again, we're looking at commuting. And we are, what you're seeing here is of all of the people that are commuting in each metro area, what mode are they taking and how large of a share that is. So we are coming in at around 14th in terms of percent of trips made by driving, whereas a place like New York has a much larger percentage of people who are walking to work, which is expected in this instance.
How do you cover, sorry, I got a question on that one. How do you cover if you do a combo of walking and transit?
That is, I believe, so there is a kind of hierarchy in how you, how they decide what like the primary mode of a trip is. So even if you are driving to work, you still need to generally walk out of your place of residence to your car, drive wherever you're going, park, and then walk or in some other way transit yourself to your destination. And I don't have the information on how the National Household Travel Survey does that hierarchy, but it is standardized across all of the metros in this plot.
So it'd be the majority of your trip.
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
Say, Liz, if you go back, this is Joe with Anoka County. I just found it
Yes.
interesting how Minnesota has the largest percentage, it looks like, of the school bus. But that was somewhat interesting.
Right. And in this instance, commute is work or school.
Yeah, it's just interesting how some of those other cities, it doesn't even look like it even shows up on there. It's interesting.
Yeah, you can spend a lot of time digging into this plot, and I really encourage folks to click on the link in the bottom left corner, and that'll take you to the section with this data. Okay, moving along a bit, the next plot I am sharing is job availability by mode. And this plays into improving multimodal access to regional job concentrations identified in Thrive MSP 2040. So we measure this by looking at accessibility to jobs via multiple modes, auto, transit, walking, and biking, and compare to peer regions. And this data comes from work done by the University of Minnesota Accessibility Observatory. So here we see that the region ranks third among 24 highway peer regions for accessibility by auto. In 2016, the typical worker had access to about 741,000 jobs within 30 minutes by car. And among large metropolitan areas, we're surpassed by Los Angeles and San Jose that have more access to jobs within 30 minutes by auto, but we have but we are stationed above Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, et cetera. The next TPP goal is healthy and equitable communities, which begins with reducing transportation-related air emissions. So first, we'll look at the regional measured air quality and how for regulated transportation-related air pollutants and how they compare to federal standards. So in this plot, you see the each of the criteria pollutants is a line and color, and the percentage of the national standard that we were at in the given year is on the is our y-axis. In particular, you can see that carbon monoxide has decreased fairly consistently and dramatically, and particularly sulfur dioxide as well. Also playing in with that is looking at vehicle miles traveled, which is a key predictor of greenhouse gas emissions. So vehicle miles traveled per person remained pretty stable at approximately 25.5 vehicle miles traveled per person per day from 2010 to 2019. And then in 2020, with the onset of the COVID pandemic, this fell to about 20 vehicle miles traveled per person per day. And in 2021, we're starting to rebound. This plot is showing the comparison of the percent change in regional population and the percent change in vehicle miles traveled. So you can see the interplay of population and vehicle miles traveled together. Another one of my favorite plots is registrations of electric vehicles, which are pertinent to emissions reductions. And this is data going from 2018 to the most recent data was in early 2023. Plug-in hybrid vehicle registrations have grown from about, have grown 48% from 2018 to 2022, while battery electric vehicles have grown 241% in the same time frame, even though they started at a similar point. And yeah. Also playing into that is when you combine vehicle miles traveled and fuel sources and fuel efficiency, we also look at fuel consumption. So this is a statewide measure that looks at the total consumption of gasoline. And in the short term, it closely follows VMT trends, but in the long term, changes in fuel efficiency in the vehicle fleet also matter. So this measure is of particular importance to transportation finance, given the importance of fuel taxes in federal and state transportation funding. Another neat thing with this plot is that other than the climate plot, this is the data that goes the furthest back. We're going back prior to 1970. The next part of this is to increase the availability and attractiveness of transit, bicycling, walking, and to encourage healthy communities through the use of active transportation options. So increasing the availability of transit across the region, especially high frequency transit, is one way to support active travel in the region. And in this plot, we are looking at the availability, transit availability in the region as both the as the share of the regional population within 10 minutes, a 10-minute walk to transit by both transit of any service type and high frequency transit. So as of 2022, about 15% or so of the region's population lived in the small slice of the Twin Cities region that is served by high frequency transit. The next section is guiding land use. And the goal that this plot illustrates is leveraging transportation investments to guide land use and regional development patterns that advance the regional vision of stewardship, prosperity, livability, equity, and sustainability. So this data is from an analysis that was completed in April of 2021, where staff reviewed 66 completed comprehensive plans and compiled the resulting transportation-related policies that include things like transit, bike, pedestrian supportive policies or strategies. So here we see that communities really vary in the degree to which they consider transit in their comprehensive plans. About slightly less than half of communities pursued opportunities beyond transit ways or referenced transit ways that were included in their increased revenue scenarios. So after that blast of information, thank you for paying attention. And all the TSPE is published and you are free to share far and wide and explore to your heart's content. I hope that this presentation gave you a flavor of the published document, and you can find that on the Met Council website. Jonathan Ehrlich is also here and we can answer questions.
Thank you, Liz. Very interesting presentation. Appreciate that. And Joe or Elaine, could you confirm this is posted online so the links are available for TAC members to go grab if they want? Presentation?
It's not yet, but it will be by day's end.
Okay. All right, so we'll get the presentation posted online so you can all grab the links there if you want, or go to the Met Council webpage. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Great presentation, Liz. Very comprehensive. I'm just thinking about this through the lens of the TPP work group that we're working on for the 2050 transportation plan update, and how we want to sort of evolve to a more performance-based, data-driven investment strategy for that plan. And just kind of looking at some of the data sets that we have here. So you know, on the roadway side, I think we all know that the minor arterial local network is where we spend the vast majority of our regional solicitation roadway funds. But I'm seeing a little bit of a disconnect here in that many of the performance and condition measures that we're looking at for the roadway network are for the MnDOT system, and really don't take a look at the minor arterial system where we spend the vast majority of our regional solicitation funding. Like, for example, the pavement data was for the MnDOT system. The system reliability data was for the MnDOT system. The VMT data was for the MnDOT system. And the safety data, I believe, is for all roads, and that's a federal requirement. So that goes down to the local streets, which is, it's important to look at safety from that perspective. But I think it would also be informative and helpful to look at crashes for the minor arterial system, where we spend the vast majority of our money and where we haven't met our crash rates for the last 5 years, I think. So just an observation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good observation. Thanks, Scott. Liz, is there?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Most what you see in the TSPE is largely based on just the data that is readily available. We certainly knocked on as many doors as we could to track down data sources, but some data at this point doesn't exist, and that's a larger discussion.
Okay. All right, any further questions from committee members? See, oh, go ahead, Innocent.
Yes, Liz and Jonathan, thanks a lot for great presentation. I just have just a question. We know that this one reflects the chart that you show under air quality. We are working, trying to respond to some of the changes that EPA is doing right now. One would be there's trying to tighten the standard for PM 2.5 and possibly also ozone. Then recently, they just starting the standard for to improve fuel efficiency on light duty and medium duty and also heavy duty vehicles. And as they doing that, most of the concentration level will be changing. And also because like PM2.5, there are some section or some of the monitors that was quite close. So if they reduce it to maybe 8, maybe between 8 and 10, then we'll have probably issues in some of the areas. Have you also get information on that? Maybe I know probably that doesn't reflect what you show now, but in the year 1 to 2 years, probably some of those charts or something might change pending or depending on the approval of some of those standards that they're working on now.
Innocent, that's a great point, and there is a lot of detail that that we've eliminated for simplicity. As you know, there's each one of the criteria pollutants has as many as half a dozen individual measures, and that we have that PCA monitors adherence to each one of them at a variety of sites, and so we've tried to collapse what is essentially the data from the air quality network monitoring plan that PCA produces, which is I think 125 pages, and into one graph. And so a lot of that detail does get lost, but it's important then to recognize that the standards that we're measuring are fluid and do change on a regular basis, and in particular the PM 2.5 and ozone standards are going to be changing, and that will have an impact on what whether air quality in the region meets the national ambient air quality standards for PM 2.5 and ozone, and we're going to continue monitoring that, continue discussing that, and to the extent that, and certainly discussing it with you and others at the PCA to ensure that when the new standards come out, we're ready to reflect them both in our performance documents, as well as there will be a lot of other policy consequences to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other questions from committee members? Great. Well, thank you both, or thank you, Liz, for this very thorough presentation. There's some information in the chat box. If you guys don't have your chat boxes pulled up, Liz has provided the link, and we're also noting that the PowerPoint will be available online shortly as well. So thank you both. And I will note that we are 10 minutes over time, so I'll just see real quick if there are any agency announcements from TAC members today. And seeing none, then short of any disagreement, I will adjourn the meeting.